Welcome, everyone, to Kindergarten Math with Confidence, presented by Kate Snow. We're glad you all could join us. My name is Justin Moore. I'm an editor with Well Trained Mind Press and a moderator for tonight's webinar. Let me introduce our presenter. Kate Snow is a math educator on a mission to help parents raise kids who are capable and confident at math. She has taught math both in the classroom and as a homeschooler, and is the author of several books with Well Trained Mind Press, including Preschool Math at Home and the Math Facts That Stick series, all of which you can find on our website or at your favorite bookstore. Kate has a degree in mathematics from Harvard and a master's degree in elementary education from Walden University. And this evening she's coming to us from her home in Michigan. Tonight's presentation should last between 30 and 45 minutes, and we're going to have a Q&A, but we're saving it until the end. So if you have questions, write them down or keep them in mind, and as the presentation concludes, we will turn on the chat feature, and then I'm going to take your questions typed out in the chat window, and I'll pass them on to Kate. I'll try to take them in the order that you type them into the chat window, and Kate will answer as many as she can. In the next few days, we're going to make the slides and a recording of this webinar available to all of you. So don't worry too much if you miss a detail here or there. And now, over to Kate.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Kindergarten Math with Confidence. I'm so glad to be with you tonight. Thank you, Justin, for that introduction. So tonight we'll be talking about Kindergarten Math with Confidence, the instructor guide and the workbook, and I'm just so excited to be here with you for this. I'm sure that many of you are veteran homeschoolers and many of you are probably brand new to homeschooling. This might be your very first child that you're homeschooling. And if you're like most parents that I work with, you might not be super excited to teach math. And for a lot of people, we had not so great math educations. You might think of math as boring or tedious or mysterious or intimidating. You might remember lots of time tests and repetitive, boring worksheets, or just like following a procedure and just kind of hoping that it was going to turn out right without really understanding what it was about. And so I just want to encourage you tonight, and as you think about teaching your child math, just to let all that go. Math doesn't have to be like that. And that's really why I'm writing the Math with Confidence series. I want to help parents like you enjoy teaching math. I love teaching math. I think it's one of the most fun things to do. And even if it's never your favorite subject, I hope that by using Math with Confidence books, by building your teaching skills through your teaching, you'll come to enjoy it too. I want you to have those aha moments when your child gets a concept and their eyes light up. I want you to be able to cuddle on the couch with your child and enjoy picture books about math together, to discover math in real life together, and to laugh over math games and be silly together and enjoy your math time. So tonight we're going to be doing lots of the details of Math with Confidence, but I just don't want to lose that big picture. You know, the point of teaching your child kindergarten math is to give your child that great foundation with numbers, but also to help him or her develop a lifelong love of math and a positive attitude towards math. So as we kind of get into how the books work and how it all goes, let's just not lose sight of that. And don't be fooled either. Just because it's fun doesn't mean that it's light. This is a full, rigorous kindergarten math curriculum. Your child will learn a lot this year, but I hope you'll also have a lot of fun too. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on my slides here, and we will get right to it. Just got to find the right thing. Okay, so here we go. So our goal tonight is to equip you for a fruitful and fun year of enjoying math with your kindergartner so that you can teach math with confidence, so you're ready to go for the year. Here's a couple pictures from, let's see, I think this little guy over here has been, he got started with kindergarten math with confidence this summer and was doing a 3 scavenger hunt. And here's a little girl from one of the pilot tests who's doing a pretend store. And these are the kinds of fun activities that you'll be doing throughout the year. So here's what we're going to do tonight. We're going to start with just an overview of how the books are organized. I'm going to give you kind of kindergarten math 101, the most important concepts you'll teach your child so you understand them deeply and are ready to go. I'll do kind of my top 10 tips for teaching kindergarten math. And then at the end, I'll take your questions. I won't be looking at the chat while I'm presenting. So if I ignore you, it's not personal. But at the end, Justin will open up the chat and he'll send me your questions so I can get those answered. And if you have your books, feel free to grab them. I'm going to be just like going through them, giving you a guided tour today. And don't worry if you don't have them handy, I will put the pages up on the screen. But I want to really dig into the book so you're ready for the year. So we'll start here with an overview of the books. Like I said, there's 2 volumes. You'll need the instructor guide and the student workbook to teach the full program. You'll also need a math kit. And if you look at page 8 of the instructor guide, there's the full list of what you'll need. I tried to make Math with Confidence as simple and just use as many household items as possible. So you can see these are pretty simple. You need 100 small counters, pattern blocks, coins, 2 packs of 100 index cards. You'll use those for making number cards and for writing equations. You need some blank paper and some pencils. So pattern blocks are the only specific manipulative you'll need that you may need to buy if you don't have them already. And there, you can find them online for about $10 for a small set, and that's all you'll need for the year. And then to make math as real life and applicable as possible, you'll use some household supplies. And I've listed these in 3 different places in the book, so you can always find them easily. Each week overview has the list of what you'll need for that week, anything special. But each lesson has any household supplies you'll need, and then there's a list of all of them at the back of the book. But these are really things you have. I tried really hard to make sure you don't have to like go out and buy stuff. So, I mean, there are things like spoons, tape, scissors, a piece of construction paper. So they're not complicated. So the book is organized into 10 units, 32 weeks. So most units are 2 or 3 weeks, depending on how much content there is to cover. And this is a mastery approach to new material that I use in the books. We focus on just one topic at a time because this really helps children understand the concepts of math and allows them to learn incrementally. So through each unit, we'll focus on just one topic at a time, and then you just build layer by layer by layer. So your child can make lots of connections and really focus on one topic at a time to really understand it. So for example, here's week 1. This is page 12 and 13 in your book if you're following along. And you can see that the week overview gives you kind of an overview of what math you'll be teaching and a list of the lessons that week. There's a feature called Teaching Math with Confidence. And in there, I try to give you a little bit of teacher knowledge about what's coming up this week to understand what you're really trying to accomplish. So even though all the lessons are open and go, this is a place where you can go to understand what you're doing a little bit more and to learn a little bit more about teaching math. Then there's also the household items that you'll need for the week. And then there's a feature called Weaving Math into Everyday Life. Each week there's just a little simple suggestion for an activity you can do with your child to integrate the math that he or she's learning in the book into just your normal life. And so I think this one's just looking for numbers and talking about them during week 1. And then finally, there's a math book of the week. These are suggested, they're completely optional. You don't have to track down every book. But it is a picture book that helps, that includes the math from that week. And they're really delightful, fun picture books. A lot of pilot testers said that having the picture books is one of their favorite things about Math with Confidence. So if you can find even just a handful of these, it's a great way to add some literacy to your math time, or vice versa. You can always read that math picture book during like a morning time or during reading time. So that's the week overview. And then each week has 4 lessons. I wanted to give you that 5th day to read the picture book and do the enrichment activity, or to just have a day where you might run errands or get caught up on other things. Each lesson, so this is a sample lesson. This is week 1, lesson 4, and it's on the number 4. And so first there's this gray box that tells you what the purpose is for each section of the lesson and the materials you'll need. And then there's 3 sections to each lesson. First, there's a review and warm-up, and this is to start the lesson on a positive note, help build your child's confidence, and review some key skills. After the review and warm-up section, then it's the hands-on teaching time. In this lesson, there's 2 hands-on teaching activities that you'll do with your child for talking about the number 4. And then finally, there's a workbook page for your child to complete. They could do it on their own. They're very short. Usually they'll just probably do it in a couple minutes with you watching while you're still cleaning up your other things. Here's an example from that lesson where you can see there's just a little bit of number tracing at the top, and then an assignment to draw 4 balls on each box. So they'll get more complex and more sophisticated and more challenging math as you go through the year. But it's always just 1 page per day. There's always a little bit of tracing at the top so your child gets used to writing numbers, and then just a simple activity at the bottom that reinforces what your child learned during the lesson. And then I just also wanted to point out that at the end of each week, there in the instructor guide, there's an answer key. For the most part, these pages are pretty self-explanatory, but if you're ever confused about what's included on a particular page, you can always just check the instructor's guide to see what's supposed to happen there. And then lastly, at the end of each unit, there's a checkpoint. And this is just really a chance for you to see how your child's doing and to get some guidance on whether or not to move on. Pacing can be one of the most difficult parts for teaching math, I've found, with parents. I get a lot of questions about, what if my kid hasn't quite mastered this, or I'm not sure if they're quite ready to move on to this. The checkpoint is what helps you know. The checkpoints have 2 or 3 parts. First, there's a what to expect at the end of the unit. So that just tells you what's typical for kindergartners. A lot of the times, a child will be working on the skills in the unit, but won't have quite mastered them yet. And that's perfectly fine. This section helps you know kind of what's normal. Then there's a section called, is your child ready to move on? And this tells you what your child must absolutely have learned to be ready for the next section. Since math builds step by step, sometimes you really do have to know certain things, of course, to be able to move on to the next one. So if, for example, Unit 1 is on numbers 1 through 10, and then Unit 2 is on shapes. So if your child hasn't mastered everything from Unit 1 before Unit 2, it's no problem. They'll keep working on it through Unit 2 and they'll continue to review it. But then I'm going to just flip here to the Unit 3 checkpoint. Unit 3 is it's on directions and patterns. And Unit 4, the following unit, is on comparing numbers. So your child really does have to have learned how to recognize quantities to 10 and recognize written numerals before going on to that comparing section. And so if your child needs more practice, they're not quite ready to move on, that's what this section provides. It gives you some ideas for review activities, lets you know what you should work on before you move on to that next unit. And that will just help you know whether to move on or not. In general, plan to teach 1 lesson per day and keep on moving through each unit until you get to the checkpoint, and then use that to decide whether or not to move forward. If you feel like your child isn't totally remembering everything they're learning within a certain unit, that's okay. There's a lot of time built into this book. There's a lot of review built into it so that children can learn at their own pace. They don't have to all just learn everything right at once. So that's the overview. And now we're going to move into what I'm calling Kindergarten Math 101. I think the thing about kindergarten math is that it can sometimes be kind of deceptively simple. When we're learning the numbers to 10, this is pretty straightforward. But a lot of the time there's more than meets the eye to these concepts. You're laying a foundation for the future. That's very important, and doing these things thoroughly really helps to give your child preparation for what's coming in 1st and 2nd grade. So we're going to go through the units. There's 10 units. I'm going to talk about several of them in some detail. Others I'm going to gloss over a little bit more, but I wanted to just give you a tour of some of the key concepts that you're going to be teaching your child this year. And I just want to say in advance, like, don't feel like you have to scribble all of this down or get it all right now, because most of what I'm telling you is in the book somewhere. It's in those, the Teaching Math with Confidence at the beginning of each week. There are also gray boxes within the lesson that provide notes on what you're teaching your child. So this is mostly all in there, but sometimes it's helpful to hear it live from a person rather than reading it. So I'm going to go through and just highlight some of those important concepts you'll be teaching your child. So starting in Unit 1, this is the numbers to 10. But it's much more than just counting to 10 or recognizing the written numerals to 10. The core skill is called subitizing that you're working on in this unit. And subitizing is being able to tell how many without counting one by one. And so you're going to be focusing a lot on number recognition in this unit. If you used preschool math at home, I will say your child may just breeze right through this unit because you'll have done some of these things, but this is such an important foundation that I wanted to make sure to include it so that all children get these key elements. And subitizing is kind of hard to understand through explanation, so I wanted to give you a demonstration. Okay, so on this next slide, get ready. There are going to be some dots. And just take a look and see how many there are. I'm just going to flash them for just a second. So see if you can tell right away how many there are. Okay. So how many dots were there? You could probably tell right away. There were 4. And that's because our brains are really good at recognizing small quantities. We can see 4 without having to count them. We can just recognize them, especially if they're organized like that. Okay, so now get ready for some more dots. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm going back. Here's the 4 just to see them one more time. So that was those 4. Okay, so now get ready for some more dots. Okay. Okay. Could you tell quickly that time how many there were? I'm betting that you probably could. There were just 5, and they were spread out this time, but there were just a few enough that you could probably tell how many there were without any problem. Okay, but now we're going to do that again. Okay. Now I showed them to you for the same amount of time, but I bet with that one you might not be quite sure how many. You probably have a pretty good estimate of how many there were, but you aren't 100% sure. And that's because once there's more than 5 objects, our brains can't pick them up instantaneously. We need to subdivide them in some way. And so here's that slide again. You can see that there were 9 dots. But to figure out how many there are, I really have to tell at a glance, I have to start to subdivide. I can see, oh, well, here's 4 and here's 5. Okay, now I know that there's 9. So in Unit 1, you're going to be introducing your child to the 10 frame. And then this is just a super simple tool that helps children learn to subitize so they can see those quantities quickly. This makes a huge difference for them as they learn to add and subtract. It especially helps prevent counting on fingers. If you've used my addition facts that stick or subtraction facts that stick books, you are very well acquainted with the 10 frame. This should be familiar. The 10 frame is just this grid of 10 boxes, and it has this dividing line in the middle that makes it easy to see that we have 5 on one side and 5 boxes on the other. Okay, so I'm going to do some more dots here for a second. Get ready. Okay, I just showed those to you for a second again, but I bet this time you know how many there are. Here's that slide again, and you can see that there's 9. You probably saw that there were 5 here and 4 here, so there were 9. Or maybe you paid attention to the fact that there was 1 box empty, and so there was 1 less than 10. There must be 9 there. This is the kind of thinking you're going to be helping your child develop in Unit 1. It's going to really build your child's understanding of number relationships, how numbers are connected, and really prepare him or her for addition and subtraction. You'll be focusing on these combinations of 5 and some more is what I call them. So that 8 is 5 and 3, 7 is 5 and 2, and so on. And so you'll use the 10 frame, you'll use fingers, and you'll also use nickels and pennies to help your child master these combinations. In Unit 1, you'll also help teach your child how to write numbers and read numbers, and you'll teach them to find the pairs that make 10. You'll play some games to work on those, since they're real. Understanding how numbers fit together to make 10 is a real core of learning to add and subtract. Okay, so that's a little tour of Unit 1, and now we're going to go into Unit 2. Like I said, some units I'm going to talk about more than others, but I'm just going to kind of give you a tour through all of them. So Unit 2 is on shapes. And in Unit 2, you'll be focusing on teaching your child sorting and classifying, doing shapes, building their overall spatial sense and symmetry. And so there's 3 key skills you'll be working on. First, just being able to identify basic shapes, know their properties, know that triangles have 3 sides, that rectangles have 4 sides, and corners like a piece of paper. We'll introduce the term right angle as well, but it's fine if children don't memorize that. You'll also be teaching your child a lot of logical thinking. Learning to put objects into categories and talk about how they're similar or different is the focus of, it just helps build kids' brains so they can start to look at the world that way through that analytical lens. And then in this unit, you'll be using the pattern blocks a lot to build your child's spatial skills. If you look at the pattern blocks over here, you can see that they have several different shapes. And as your child works on putting those pieces together, she'll start to really pay attention to the angles and to see how one angle's pointier than another, one's more square, one's wider. And this informal exploration with angles will really help her start to pay more attention to that in the world around her. And then throughout the shape work in this unit, you'll be teaching your child to use properties of shapes rather than their overall look in identifying them. So if you showed your child these 3 shapes right now, there's a good chance that many of your children would say they're all triangles. And I know that seems so weird to us as adults, but it's because young children look at shapes kind of their big picture. These shapes all look kind of pointy. Triangles are pointy, therefore they're all triangles. And so teaching your child to start to say, but no, let's not just rush to conclusions. Let's take a look at each one will help your child learn to think about the properties of shapes and define them that way rather than just by their overall look. And this is a developmental process. You'll start in kindergarten, but it'll take a couple years to fully sink in. Unit 3 is on directions and patterns. This is a really fun unit. I think it's some of the kindergarten pilot testers' favorite. You'll make some simple maps out of index cards and give directions around the house using right and left. And then you'll also use pattern blocks to make patterns, have your child extend patterns, and identify missing elements in patterns. Kindergartners are quite lost in space typically. If your child does not know right from left, don't be concerned at all. That's very normal, and it can take quite a while before children learn that intuitively. I'll tell you that even my daughter going into 5th grade has to stop and think sometimes about which is her right and which is her left, and she's had plenty of practice. So this will be an introduction to it, helping your child get more oriented in space, know that there are a right and a left, and then start to grasp which is which. So after that, in Unit 4, then we'll come back to some number work and focus on comparing the numbers to 10. You'll start by comparing quantities without numbers, comparing length, weights, heights, things like that, to really develop those ideas of more or less and equal. And then you'll move it into the realm of numbers. For some of you, your kindergartners probably already can compare numbers pretty well, but others may still be in an earlier stage. Kids usually go through 3 stages of comparing. They start with just visual estimation, which is just kind of eyeballing, like this pile looks bigger than this one, so I think it's bigger. Then they learn to line things up with one-to-one matching. And then finally they start to use numerical reasoning to say, well, 9 comes after 7 in the counting sequence, so if I have 9 things is more than 7 things. So you'll work on that, but then you'll take those skills a couple steps further. You'll teach your child to put numbers in order from least to greatest. And you'll also do something that's surprisingly tricky, which is asking your child questions like, what's 1 more than 3? What's 2 more than 3? And these less questions are challenging. Say, what's 2 less than 5? To think that through. But these kinds of comparison questions then help set the stage for addition and subtraction, to think about what's more and what's less, to think about adding and subtracting. So we're about, let's see, we have 10 units and we're on Unit 5, so we're about halfway through. Unit 5 is on addition, and we really focus on simple addition in this book. The idea is to help your child understand the concept of addition, that addition means joining 2 groups together, and helping your child learn to write equations to match real objects and situations. So for example, you'll use all sorts of things, fingers, counters, drawings, stuffed animals, stuff around the house, to act out addition situations. So here we have 5 counters and 3 counters. And then you'll teach your child how to translate that into these written equations. This is a big step towards abstraction, going from real stuff to these symbols. And so it can take a little bit of time, and it takes some careful building up to understand what all is going on here. I want to emphasize that in kindergarten, we are not going for addition fact mastery. Some kids will learn some of the addition facts along the way, but that's really a first grade skill. We're focusing here on the concept. It's totally fine for your child to act out every single addition problem in the book with counters, and to be just focusing on understanding what the symbols mean. You don't have to be worried about drilling the addition facts or anything like that when kindergarten. And so to help your child make this jump to the abstract symbols, we'll do a few different things. One is that you'll use, like I said, lots of different stuff: objects, pictures, familiar situations, things that are relevant to your child's life, so they can use that to help them understand what's going on with these symbols. You'll also teach the plus and the equal symbols separately, so that your child learns to think about what each one means. Kids often tend to think that the equal sign means that the answer is coming, and so you'll spend a lesson or two making sure your child understands that the equal sign means that two things are the same as each other, that 5 plus 3 is the same as 8, not just that the answer of 8 is coming. And then you'll also include both dynamic and static word problems. And this is really just kind of like fancy teacher speak for two different but related situations. Dynamic addition problems are ones where there's a change. So say 4 birds were on a branch, and then 3 more birds came to join them. There's a change, so that's a dynamic situation. A static word problem would be, for example, I have 2 red pieces of candy and 5 green pieces of candy. How many pieces of candy do I have? In those types of problems, the stuff is already there, and you're just joining some groups that are already there. It's a subtle difference. Your child does not need to know those words. But using a big range of situations and using both of those kinds helps your child think about addition in just a more sophisticated way and prepares him or her for a wide range of word problems next year. And so that's the addition unit. And then once we've really worked through what addition means, we'll finally get to the numbers to 20. And here in this unit, your child will just do a refresher on counting to 20. Probably many of your children can already count to 20. So make sure they've got the oral sequence down, and then focus on some of the trickier aspects of counting, making sure that your child knows to count each object exactly 1 time, and helping her learn how to organize objects for counting. Play games where we pretend that the counters are stuck to the table and focus on counting them in an organized way so that you know exactly how many there are. Once we've got that the counting sequence to 20 down, we'll focus on learning the numbers in the teen as combinations of 10 and some more. So this is very similar to what you're doing in Unit 1. Instead of combination of 5 and some more, you're working on the combinations of 10 and some more. And you'll use similar strategies. You'll use 10 frames again, fingers. You'll introduce tallies and teach your child how to use tallies for these combinations. And you'll also introduce dimes and use combinations of coins to show the numbers in the teens. Now, English doesn't always make it easy, though, with these numbers in the teens because our words don't follow a pattern and they only reveal part of what's going on with the numbers. And this is an important thing to keep in mind in math, that there's some things that are just conventions, like the fact that we call the number 11 11 is just something somebody decided. But the fact that it's 10 and 1 and that's what the written number 11 means is a key organizing principle of our number system. But for these things that are kind of rote conventions, plain old chance and memorization are very important. So you'll teach the 10 and some more chant, so 10 and 1, 11, 10 and 2, 12, to make sure your child makes that connection between the combinations of 10 and some more and the actual numbers that we use to name them. You'll also use overlapping index cards to help your child understand what the written numbers mean. And so you can see down here, these are just index cards. The 10 is 2 index cards taped right next to each other. And so the 10 matches the 10 counters on the top 10 frame. The 7 matches the counters on the bottom 10 frame. And so once you overlap them, your child will be able to see that 10 and 7 makes 17. And that will help your child develop that understanding that 17 is 10 and 7. I've had quite a few questions from people wondering why I don't explicitly address place value in kindergarten. And that's a very deliberate choice. Some programs rush it and try to get children understanding place value in kindergarten, but from everything that I've done in my own teaching and what I've read in the research, that's really a recipe for frustration for most kids. And so we won't be doing that this year. And here's why. One reason is that kindergartners are very concrete thinkers. So, if you have an apple, it's an apple whether it's in the kitchen, whether it's in the family room, whether it's under the backseat of the car, still an apple. And so it's very strange to them that this number 1 here in 14 means 110, but that when you move it over here in 41, it just means 1, 1. And so that is very baffling for kindergartners. They're often not developmentally ready to think about that. It could mean different things. They're also still lost in space. First graders are still going to have some trouble with left and right, but kindergartners are still really developing that idea. So the fact that it means something different based on whether it's left or right is really hard. And kindergartens often have trouble seeing 10 objects as 110. When they see 10 marbles in a bag, they see 10 marbles in a bag. They do not see one of anything. And so for all these reasons, we will wait on formal place value until first grade. And in kindergarten, we'll focus on these combinations of 10 and some more, of using the 10 frames to organize those and using those overlapping index cards, so that your child has a good start, a good foundation for really getting place value in first grade when it won't be so frustrating. So after the numbers to 20, then we'll work on measurement for a couple of weeks. This is another really fun hands-on unit. You'll do a week of measuring length and really emphasizing this idea that when we measure with a unit, we need to repeat it over and over, and that there need to be no overlaps or gaps with the measurements. You'll start with using paper clips to measure some objects, and then you'll compare those to using 1-inch blocks from your pattern block set. You'll also introduce standard units, tell your child about inches and feet. And you'll also explore some other measurable attributes. That's just basically, again, teacher speak for the fact that we can measure one object many ways. So with a book, you can measure its height or its length. You can measure its weight. You can measure its thickness. For a bowl, you can measure all those things in addition to its capacity. So spend a little time exploring that and exploring standard units for those attributes. You'll slosh some water around and measure capacity, and it's just a couple really fun lessons there. Then in Unit 8, you'll get to subtraction, and the subtraction unit's very similar to addition. Again, you're going to focus on the concept of subtraction, not subtraction fact mastery, and help your child learn to write equations to match real objects, real situations. And one thing that sometimes isn't really, I think, understood by most people is that subtraction doesn't just mean take away. And so we're not going to overcomplicate it here, but you will teach your child that there's a couple different situations where they can use subtraction. Here's 2 examples of how you can use 9 minus 5 in real life. So there's, of course, many takeaway situations. So say I have 9 apples, and then I eat 5 of them. I end up with 4 of them left. These 5 apples were removed and taken away. We also use subtraction in real life for what I call take apart situations. So say, okay, I have 9 cupcakes to frost. I have frosted 5 of them so far. How many do I have left to frost? Nothing's getting removed or taken away, but we still use subtraction to find the other part. And so you'll teach your child to use subtraction in these situations as well. Again, like the dynamic and static addition, your child does not need to know all of these terms, but it will set the stage and prepare him for more complicated word problems in first and second grade. In Unit 9, we'll get to the numbers to 100, and we'll go gradually to the numbers to 100. No rush. Start with the numbers to 30, then 50, and then 100. And the main thing that we'll focus on in this unit is learning the counting sequences of 1s, 2s, 5s, and 10s to 100, and also helping your child really understand what those mean. Kids are good fakers. You can have a 3-year-old with a good memory can go 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16 without having a clue what it means. And even in kindergarten, your child could fake you out with just knowing those oral counting sequences without understanding what they're actually naming. So you'll do lots of hands-on projects and hands-on activities to help your child understand what this counting by a number actually means. So for example, here's bags of counters. So we have 4 bags of counters, is 40. You'll do a hundreds craft project where you put 10 groups of 10 of some sort of craft item and glue them down to see what 100 looks like. You'll make tallies. You'll take 100 steps outside. So all of these counting activities will be really kind of embedded in real life and fun and active so that your child understands what these numbers mean and what counting by these numbers mean. And then at the end of that unit, you'll also introduce your child to the 100 chart. This is just a simple chart with the numbers from 1 to 100. And with the chart, you'll use this just to introduce what the numbers look like. So your child starts to learn how to read these numbers. I don't expect full mastery of this in kindergarten. Some kids will pick it up quickly and some kids will still be working on this in 1st grade, and either way is perfectly fine. But working with the hundreds chart just helps your child start to see some patterns, see some printed numbers, and to not be surprised when he sees it again in 1st grade. And then finally, the last unit is time. And okay, so I'm going to tell you a little secret, which is that I know most people don't actually get to the end of their math curriculum. I hope you do. I really hope you do. But if you don't, it's okay. A lot of kindergartners will know some of these concepts already, but this unit will help them kind of put it all together and integrate it with what they've learned about numbers the rest of the year. But if you don't get to this, you could do it over the summer just kind of casually. In this unit, you'll work on learning how to read a calendar, and I read the numbers on a calendar and identify the day of the week as well as the date. You'll make a schedule of your day and teach your child how to read these written times. And then you'll compare and contrast digital clocks with hands, and you'll teach your child how to read time to the hour. And that's as far as we'll go in kindergarten. In 1st grade, he'll learn more about that, and then even more in 2nd grade. And I just want to say from the front, don't skip week 32. Even if you don't quite finish unit 10, week 32 is a review and celebrate week. And I think this is so important, especially in math, which is a subject that sometimes feels like, you know, you just start in kindergarten and you just have to keep on doing it until you're out of high school. You need moments to pause and reflect and celebrate success and progress, and to see how much progress your child has made. And your child needs to see that too. So this is a week where you'll look back at the workbook, talk about your favorite activities, play some of your favorite games again, and just generally take a moment to pat yourselves both on the back for a job well done. So I know that's a long way off when we're sitting here in August, but just put that in the back of your head, not skip that week, to make sure you do that. And then once you get to the very back of the book, if you're flipping with me here, this is way at the end, but there's some helpful resources at the back. I just want to make sure you know now that they're there. There's a full scope and sequence of the main objectives from each unit. If you need to do any like state reporting or anything, this will be very helpful to you, because you can just say, here's what my child learned. So you can copy that. There's also a complete list of the math books of the week. And I put this here so that you can make a copy and just stick it in your library bag, or keep it near your computer so you can request these books as you get closer to them in the year. So they're all right there for you. The full materials list is here. Again, this is at the top is kind of the things you need in your math kit repeated again. And then here's just all the little household items that you'll use over the course of the year. So you can take a look at that to see that they're really not a big deal, and you probably have all of them, you know, at the ready. There are also Blackline Masters at the back of the book. 4 of them are essential ones that you will use over and over. These are the ones, if you're somebody who likes to laminate, these are the ones that are worth your time, or you can put them in a plastic page protector. There's Blackline Master 1, 4, 5, and 8 are ones you'll use quite a bit. There's also some non-essential Blackline Masters. These are really just there in case you don't have access to coins. If you live outside the US and need some generic coins, you can use those. If you can't get pattern blocks for sometimes, and if you can't get pattern blocks, you can use this template. You can color them and cut them out. It's not ideal, but if you don't have access, I know sometimes people who are like living abroad and don't have access to them use my books, and so I like to make this as easy to use as possible. Oh, and if you're in a country that uses the metric system, you can use centimeter squares for the measurement unit. So if those don't apply to you, don't cut all those out and laminate them. You don't need to. They're just there as an option. Okay, and then last, I see we've been going for 40 minutes, so now it's speed round, but I just wanted to kind of share a little bit of my top 10 teaching kindergarten, especially for those of you who are new to this homeschooling journey. I just wanted to give you a couple of the most important things I wish I'd known when I started. Okay, so first, avoid the overcomplication danger zone. If you are feeling tempted to combine Math with Confidence with another curriculum, I just suggest you don't. Pick one. It can be Math with Confidence or the other one. But you should pick one and teach it to your utmost. Otherwise, it's just you'll end up wasting a lot of time and energy trying to integrate them both and do everything. I know it's so hard to let things go when you've looked at a lot of programs and are having trouble deciding, but picking one and really doing it is really what makes for the best teaching. 2, plan a consistent and short daily math time. You probably don't need more than about 15 minutes a day for math. Keep it quick, keep it fun. Don't let it just drag on and on, but be as consistent as possible. It's much better to do 4 days a week of 10 minutes a day than once a week of 40 minutes. If your child is crying or if everybody's just getting really frustrated, stop. It might be the day, it might be the concept, but that's just plowing forward doesn't do anybody any good. If your child hits a wall with the topic and just is so frustrated that they can't even speak, you might just need to skip it and come back to it later. When my daughter was in kindergarten, she hated subtraction. It really, really bugged her that you couldn't flip the numbers in subtraction. So in addition, you can say 4 plus 3 or 3 plus 4. It really bugged her that you could not do 3 minus 4. And she just shut down on me when it came to subtraction. And so we just stopped doing subtraction for a while. It just was not worth the daily battle over it. And so if you have tears of frustration, just wait a couple weeks, come back to it, change fast. This one is so important. You are the teacher, not Math with Confidence. I do my best to write books that work for the widest range of kids possible, but I'm not with your individual kid on a given Tuesday in December. And so if your child is rolling her eyes at you because you're asking her these questions that are so easy, make them harder or skip them. If your child is super frustrated, make it easier or take a day off. You're in charge of what you teach, so watch your actual kid. Don't feel like you have to follow every single word that I put in the book because you're the teacher who sees that kid and knows what's best for your child. But when you're not sure about what to do, because I know it can be hard to make those decisions, look ahead at the checkpoints. They'll just guide you to know, is this important? Do I need to focus on this? Or can I just kind of keep on going? Don't get faked out. When your child is just angelically repeating after you 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, just make sure that you're remembering the possibility that they might just be reciting something they don't understand. Ask questions, have them demonstrate what they're doing with manipulatives. Anytime you're not sure your kid really gets it, some probing questions or something that's a little other than reciting will help you see what's really going on. Personalize the lessons. And something that's so fun about homeschooling. If your child loves mini erasers, use mini erasers for your math manipulatives. If you're doing word problems, use your siblings, cousins, neighbors' names, and make them personal and fun. Use your child as the star of everything. Often I suggest, say, pretending that things are cookies or crackers. If you like to eat other things, your child has other favorite foods, use those instead. It doesn't take much time to do that, to make those kind of little tweaks, and kids just love them so much, and it makes everything so much more fun. 8, don't just hand your child the workbook. Because of the way that most have been taught math, we're used to thinking that the written work is the be-all, end-all of math class. But for kindergarten math with confidence, the most important part is the hands-on activities. If you have to skip something, skip the workbook. Don't do it. And in fact, the people who pilot tested kindergarten didn't even have any workbook. They just did the hands-on activities and gave their kids a whole year of kindergarten math without any of that written work. So don't just hand your child the workbook and think that that's kindergarten math. This is just something to know in advance before you start homeschooling. There will be bad days, especially in November and February. We are all human, and you're going to have bad days. Your kids are going to have bad days. Sometimes things are just not going to go right. It doesn't mean that homeschooling is wrong. It doesn't mean that the curriculum is wrong for you. It just means that some days you need to regroup and do something else. We are all facing crazy challenges this year. Who knows what 2020 and 2021 academic year is going to bring. So be easy on yourself. This isn't a normal year. When you have those bad days, it's okay to slump for a little bit. Just kind of pull yourself back up, keep on going, and don't blame yourself, because homeschooling's a hard job, especially in November and February. And then finally, remember, it's kindergarten. And I mean that in two ways. One way I mean that is don't put too much pressure on yourself. If you do most of this book, your child will be ready for first grade. Really kindergarten is pretty simple. There's lots of math to learn, but don't stress yourself out about it. And then the other way I mean that is just to remember what a just joyful, happy time kindergarten should be. Kindergarten is all about setting your child on a path of enjoying learning, of getting used to doing some official schoolwork. And so just try to keep things as light and fun and easy as possible. You don't need to spend hours a day doing seat work, unless your child loves that. Hey, go for it. But it's kindergarten, and so just enjoy it. Last night I was helping a friend who's homeschooling for the first time, and she has a preschooler and a second grader, and working with her and helping her, looking over my notes from those years, just reminded me of what precious years they are. My kids are 10 and 13 now, and so far into it does not feel like kindergarten anymore, I'll say. So I hope you just really enjoy this year with your kindergartner, with these sweet, precious times with the 5 or 6-year-old. And so that is my top 10 tips here. And so now we're going to open it up for questions. Justin is turning on the chat so that you can put your questions over there in the chat bar, and then he's going to send those over to me. And before he does that, I just want to give you a couple helpful resources while you're putting those questions in there. So let's see. So my website is here at kateshomeschoolmath.com. And you can find lots of articles and resources there to help you in your homeschool math journey. I also have a free email course called Homeschool Math 101. And it's just like 10 emails. It kind of gives you the big picture of what homeschool math looks like. It gets you beyond kindergarten, thinking about what how this looks over the elementary years. So if you'd like some more to learn more about teaching homeschool math, that link is just at the bottom of my homepage. And then finally, you'll probably have lots of questions come up as you teach this year. There's lots of different places to look for homeschooling advice on the internet. My personal favorite is the Well-Trained Mind forums, which you can find at forums.welltrainedmind.com. There are a ton of veteran homeschool moms out there who will answer your questions, who can help you with specifics, with like very specific questions that you have. Often people have already posted those questions. You can search for them and see what people have said in the past. You always have to take any individual opinion with a grain of salt, but I think a lot of times the Facebook forums I've seen tend to just kind of get crowded out. They tend to devolve really quickly. The Well-Trained Mind forums are just a great resource for people for a lot of people who are really thoughtful about homeschooling. And then just want to point out my other books. Preschool Math at Home is for preschoolers. So if you have a little one you'd like to get started math, that's available. And then my Facts That Stick books teach the addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division facts for your older kids. And those are supplemental books, not a full curriculum. And then, let's see, so I think those were the things I wanted to make sure to tell you about. So I'm going to shut off my slides then and answer some questions. Okay, so question, would we use addition or subtraction facts that stick later on, or would yearly curriculum replace that moving forward? So the Facts and Stick book, like I said, they're a supplemental series. They're meant to supplement full programs. However, the math, I'm trying to make the Math with Confidence series like an all-in-one streamlined program so that you don't have to supplement. So if you continue with Math with Confidence, you will not need the Facts That Stick books. All of that fact instruction is incorporated into Math with Confidence. The only situation where you might want to use them is if you wanted to just do some review over the summer. The Facts That Stick books are great for that. Another question is what to teach after kindergarten. Will there be higher grade material? Yes. First grade Math with Confidence is in production. I'm just doing the very last few edits to the very last few units this week. And the illustrator's already working at typesetting the beginning of it. So our official publication date is next May. It may be ready earlier. So if you finish kindergarten on the early side this year, keep an eye out for that and see where we're at. And then we'll continue to release a new grade level every spring through fourth grade at least. So if you're doing kindergarten this year, you will be all set with the next grade level available as you need it. Next question, is the fact that your 10 frame is set up horizontally as opposed to vertically significant? Oh, that's a great question. So a lot of programs use a 2x5 10 frame instead of a 1x10 10 frame. So if you imagine that, it's just 2 rows of 5 in the 10 frame. And the reason, so both are good. You know, if you've used a 2x5 10 frame, that's great. Kids usually have no trouble transitioning between the two, so it's no problem to use one and then the other. The reason that I like the 1x10 is because I feel like it fits more with kids' experience of early reading. You know, they read across that entire 10 frame, get to the end, and that's kind of the stopping point. That's where the 10 ends. And I want kids to think of those combinations of the 5 and some more combinations as like 5 and 3. And so I like it that they read across. They read the 5 and then the 3 as they go across the 10 frame. But it's not a big deal. And if your child has used the 2x5, they probably won't have any trouble with that. Next question. Doing Make 10 memory, how can kids check their answers? With their fingers or with the 10 frame counters? So generally my advice is to use hands-on manipulatives as much as your child needs, which will be a lot in kindergarten. However, what you want to do is you want to teach them to use those manipulatives as much as possible in a way that doesn't require them to count everything one by one. So I like to put counters on the 10 frame especially for the working on the combinations that make 10. And then you can use a finger or a pencil. So if you have the 10 frame, you just put your finger down to divide the 10 frame and see, oh, I see 6 and I see 4, or I see 7 and I see 3. So that way you're still practicing those combinations, avoiding counting, but using the hands-on manipulatives. I use fingers in the program to help kids learn those combinations, but I don't recommend counting on fingers to find answers for the most part. So to do 4 plus 3, I don't want kids going, okay, 4 and 3 more, putting them together, that's 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That gets pretty cumbersome and inefficient really quickly, especially as the numbers get bigger. And so I prefer to use the 10 frame for that. Another question. I'm very interested in Singapore Math and Right Start because they focus on mental math and strong computational fluency. Would your kindergarten program flow well into either of those for higher grades? Yes, and Kindergarten Math with Confidence also does focus on that mental math and the strong computational fluency. Those are going to be a key part of the program as it grows. I'm just beginning work on the second grade program, and that's something I'm thinking about a lot for that grade level. But all 3 of those programs that you mentioned cover quite similar content for the kindergarten level. And so Kindergarten Math with Confidence can lead into either of those. Right Start's a little different. It has a little bit of a unique scope and sequence, but it would still work fine. But not after kindergarten would be, if you want to switch to Right Start, you'd want to use Kindergarten Math with Confidence and then go to Right Start for first grade. You wouldn't want to wait any later since they have a unique scope and sequence. So my grandson's 5. I started him on kindergarten math with confidence, and he's high functioning autistic and has several sensory issues. Even for these short sessions, he's just having trouble focusing. I was thinking of trying preschool math at home with him. What do you think? So that depends on what it is that you think is making it difficult for him to focus. If it seems like the math is too complicated, then preschool math would definitely be a good way to go, especially the latter part of it. But if it's more the just needing to focus on things and not the actual math content, I suggest sticking with it as much as you can and keeping it just even shorter if you need to. If you need to break it up into a couple parts, if you need to break up the lessons into a couple parts of the day, you can do it that way. And like if you need to skip the workbook entirely, just do those hands-on lessons. So focus on what he most needs to learn and do that as quickly as possible and as keep him moving as much as possible. A lot of families have success, and you've probably heard this before, but with kids hopping on trampolines or sitting on a squeezy ball or things like that that kind of keep their bodies moving if they're having trouble. And you can take math outside. You can do it while you're walking. A lot of these activities lend themselves to kind of being done while moving. But good luck. It's hard with kids who don't focus. And if he's only 5, it may just take him another year to kind of develop the maturity to have some of that focus too. Little boys especially vary a ton in how much they can focus on things. What's my opinion on using an abacus? Helpful in kindergarten or no? I think using an abacus can be a great way to model numbers, but because I was trying to keep this as just easy to use and inexpensive as possible, I opted not to and used other representations. If you have an abacus and want to include it with kindergarten math with confidence, you certainly could. And is money handling developmentally appropriate? So for example, making change. Usually at this level, kids they're ready to count small combinations of coins, but usually making change is a lot more difficult. You might in kindergarten say, be able to make change from like a dime, like I'm buying something that costs 7 cents. How much change do I get from a dime? But there's some pretty complicated switching that needs to happen and trading that needs to happen there. So if your child's interested in it and you explain it and they get it, great. But don't worry if they're not quite ready to get all of that until first grade or so. I think that our kids these days see money actually changing hands so rarely that they don't have as much real life experience with it as we did as kids. And so money used to be a context that really helped kids make sense of math. And kids still tend to love it. I mean, I love seeing kids play pretend store and pictures on Instagram or Facebook, and the money lessons are very popular. But often they don't have enough experience with it for it to help them actually move to a new level of math learning. What would you recommend as the next program for a child who completed through 4th grade the Math with Confidence series? So once I get there, and once I define the scope and sequence for 4th grade all the way through, I'll be sure to have recommendations for families about what to do next. But at this point, I'm not ready to say. It likely will flow into any of the similar conceptual homeschool math programs. And then any recommendations for 2nd grade, that program won't be released before he'll be ready for it. So if you're looking for more curriculum suggestions, I have a pretty comprehensive article about that on my website at kateshomeschoolmath.com. Search for how to choose curriculum in the search bar, and you'll get an article. It's kind of my guide to choosing curriculum, and in the middle there's links to my reviews of other programs. Any tips for how to teach multiple grades at the same time, preschool and 2nd grade, for example, or is it best to do separate? Oh, that's a great question. That's a big challenge for homeschooling. I was just talking about this with my friend last night as she's getting ready for that exact challenge. When I was homeschooling those grades, what I tried to do as much as possible, I tried to combine what I could combine, but not push it. So reading books on the couch, listening to history stories, doing craft projects, doing science experiments. I combined everywhere I possibly could. But when it came to skills-oriented subjects, like math or language arts or reading, there everybody had their own thing, and I looked for open and go resources that had everything organized and I could do in an efficient way, so that I could do a little bit of one-on-one teaching with each child, get the second grader going, and then work with the preschooler a little bit one-on-one. And so each child could be working at their own level there. And so that, it's great to combine some things, but those skills are hard to do. I'll also say that, but when there is an activity, like for example, if you're doing enrichment activities in math or reading a picture book of math, those are great things to combine. In kindergarten math, if a child isn't ready to move on to the next unit, do I just redo the earlier activities? Concerned about boredom and keeping my child's interest. So that's definitely a judgment call you have to make, because a kid who's just bored is not learning, typically. The checkpoints at the end of each unit will give you suggestions for activities to redo to review those skills. And I don't think you'll be too concerned, though. Usually by the time a child really needs to have learned a skill, they've had several units where they've been reviewing it, practicing it, and getting solid at it before they really need to be ready to access it to move on. So I don't think that'll be a problem for you. But if you find your child getting bored, then usually it's better to just keep moving on and building as you go. And then question, is this considered a classical approach to math education? So, the word classical in homeschooling, it can mean, it has some parts of it are well defined, like an emphasis on history, literature, ancient languages, an emphasis on using time-tested techniques for teaching. But other parts of it are not very well defined. I would say that the Kindergarten Math with Confidence and the Math with Confidence program in general is classical in that it focuses on giving children a solid foundation. It focuses on making sure they have the essential basics absolutely memorized and mastered in the elementary years. And so that during the grammar stage, they're learning that grammar of math. They're learning the language of math, the skills of math, and the core concepts. And Susan Wise-Bauer, of course, is the owner of the Well-Trained Mind Press. And if you read her Well-Trained Mind, you'll see that the Math with Confidence series is very aligned with sort of the vision she puts out for math in the elementary years. Okay, I think that's all the questions we've gotten for now, so we're going to end it there tonight. Thank you all so much for joining me tonight, and I just hope you have a wonderful year of math with your kindergartner. This is just a precious, precious year, and I hope that Kindergarten Math with Confidence helps you teach math with confidence and helps your child learn math with confidence. Thanks for coming tonight. Good night.